Good. So last time we discussed the male reproductive system, the primary reproductive organs, which are what in the male? You can write that in the chat. What are the primary reproductive organs in the male? The testes. Good. Yes. Now, what are the primary organs in the female reproductive organs? The ovaries. Good. So those are the organs that produce gametes, which are eggs and sperm. The secondary sexual organs are those that are a system of ducts. So for the male, that includes, can you remember all of the ducts? Starting with the seminiferous tubules, what is the root of sperm from there? Goes into the rete testis. And then from there into the efferent ductules. And what is in those ductules that help the sperm along? Because they don't have the flagellum quite finished yet. What is that structure that sweeps along? Do you know what we've never done? We've never done the cilia dance before. Or maybe we did. The cilia dance. So that's like stroke recovery, stroke recovery. So the cilia move in one direction anyway. So they're sweeping good in the efferent ductules. They're sweeping sperm to the storage unit, which starts with an E. What's that called? You can write that in the chat. The epididymis. Good. It's actually a difficult one to spell. There's a Y in there somewhere. Yeah, because it's stored for about 60 days and then travels with orgasm to the ductus deferens. And then there are some accessory organs that include substances such as fructose for energy and base to neutralize acidity in the urethra and the vagina. So, now our next structure is the penis. We already looked at a baculum, the penis bone. Do you remember that? The baculum. Anyway, it's quite funny because I watched this show called QI. It's a British show, and it's, stands for quite interesting. It's really funny, but also quite factual. And last night, Stephen Fry was talking to us about a baculum, but it was a badger baculum. So all carnivores have them. And apparently they used to use them as tie clips. For whatever reason, they decided that they would be good to use for tie clips. Yeah, and interestingly, the badger penis bone, it bifurcates. So it goes in two directions, splits in two directions. And so when it enters into the vagina, it opens up so that it doesn't slip out readily. And then some female vaginas, in order to make the egg more difficult to access, have become spiraled in some animals, in particular the mallard duck. So interestingly, in the mallard duck, there's a spiral penis as well, but it's in the opposite direction. It makes it more difficult to access the egg. And in other animals, I think dragonflies, from their semen, they produce a plug. So it plugs the vaginal opening or the cloaca of the female so that no other males can mate with that female. And so some male penises have developed a bone with a sharp serrated edge that will pull out the plug so that they can mate with the female. So there's really a lot of very interesting developments in reproduction. So for cats, cats have that serrated edge, and that's why when cats mate, it ain't pretty because there's some caterwauling. That must be where the word caterwauling came from. Anyhow, so the penis is a very interesting organ, and its function in animals is to deposit sperm in the vagina of mammals, of humans. Not all animals have vaginas. So birds, for example, generally have a cloacal opening. So most birds don't have a penis. The duck is an exception. With most birds, they just put their cloacas together and the male sperm transfers to the female. Very interesting reproduction. So of the male penis, half is root, internal, not visible, and half is externally visible. And that includes the shaft and the glands. So the glands, which is here, that's the glands. And the facing side of the prepuce, the side that's facing the glands, the prepuce is another name for foreskin. And that is here. Produces a waxy substance known as smegma. And that is by sebaceous glands. Those are oil glands that we have in our body. And it's waxy. So it's a lipid, it's waxy, and provides a lubrication for the glands. The tissue of the penis is known as erectile tissue. And they fill with blood during sexual arousal. By way of nitric oxide, which dilates the blood vessels in the region. So there are three structures that have spongy tissue. One, a single corpus spongiosum, and two, corpora cavernosa. So those are the spongy tissue, the erectile tissue of the penis. So all three tissues are spongy And they have tiny blood sinuses. So a sinus is kind of like a duct or a canal, a very small canal, called, and we've seen this word before, lacunae. So the internal root and the visible shaft and glands, the external portion is approximately 4 inches long when flaccid. That means when not erect. The skin over the shaft is loosely attached, allowing for expansion. It's called prepuce or foreskin. And these are the 3 cylindrical bodies. There's the single corpus spongiosum. That's along the ventral side of the penis. It ends as a dilated bulb, and it has a muscle called the bulbospongiosus muscle. These are the paired corpora cavernosa. They diverge like the arms of a Y and the penis from the root, and each is attached to a pubic arch and covered by an ischiocavernosus muscle. And the urethra is there. I almost wrote Aretha Franklin. That's how I used to remember the name. Urethra. Sorry. Urethra. And that is the passage of sperm through the urethra. So there are many fascia and tunics. So the tunica albuginea also surrounds the penis. There's superficial fascia and deep fascia. So that's connective tissue that allows expansion of tissue, but is also strong and prevents overexpansion. There are a vein, a nerve, and a dorsal artery as well. There's the urethra again. Yeah. So I think one of the questions we asked earlier is menopause only a female thing? It is not. It is also a male phenomenon, and it's known as climacteric. So that's the official title. So the reproductive system remains dormant for years after birth. During development, so it's about 10 to 12 in most boys, 8 to 10 in most girls. It depends largely on the country and the culture. So I think in some developing countries anyway, the age is younger than in developed countries. I'm not sure why that is exactly. Puberty is the period from the onset of gonadotropin secretion. For females, until the first menstrual period, and for males, until the first ejaculation of viable sperm. So that's the time of puberty, the period of puberty. So those first hormone secretions until the first menstrual period or the first ejaculation of viable sperm. The term adolescence refers to a stage in development that ends when a person attains full adult height. So where do these hormones come from? A hypothalamus, a mature hypothalamus, produces gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, and that stimulates the gonadotrope cells in the anterior pituitary to secrete FSH and LH. So those are important hormones in reproduction, in the reproductive system. So if you recall, it's the interstitial cells that produce testosterone, and follicles. This hormone LH stands for luteinizing hormone, And follicle-stimulating hormone in the male stimulates sustentacular cells to secrete an androgen-binding protein that interacts with testosterone and that stimulates spermatogenesis. So that occurs at puberty. Some other effects of testosterone in the male are the enlargement of secondary sexual organs. So the penis, the testes, the scrotum, the ducts of the reproductive system, glands, muscle mass enlarges in males at puberty. Hair starts to develop, axillary hair, facial hair, scent glands. So the apocrine glands, sebaceous or the oily glands start to develop. It stimulates erythropoiesis, which is the production of red blood cells, and libido. So testosterone has a wide range of effects. Yeah, so there is some, Jen was just saying about hormones in food. There is evidence of some leaching of hormones. I've really only heard of estrogen, but yeah, and they're estrogen mimics that can leak out of plastics, for example. That's true. During adulthood, testosterone sustains libido, which is sex drive. It's a behavior. Spermatogenesis, the production of sperm, and the reproductive tract. Whoopsie. Goodness, how'd that happen? Jump to a different lecture. No idea why. That's the one I wanted. Yeah, so testosterone, I wanted to add some extra things here. One thing about sebaceous glands develop, that's what causes acne to develop in adolescence. And also during the time of adolescent or during puberty, or that's not really a good way of putting it, sorry. After the onset of puberty. So what occurs is erections occur frequently. And ejaculation may occur in sleep. Also, testosterone is an effect of testosterone as well. Also, the growth of the larynx occurs. And hence the deepening of the voice. And when the larynx and the muscle grows, it causes the thyroid cartilage to be more prominent. That's what colloquially is called the Adam's apple. So the larynx makes the thyroid cartilage more prominent. At the front of the neck. Okay, so we did say it stimulates red blood cells. I think we said that somewhere. Let's just say it again. Stimulates erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis. It's a tough one to spell, erythropoiesis. Or the production of red blood cells. And libido, we said that already. And libido, but what's interesting is the libido occurs in the brain where neurons convert testosterone into estrogen. And it is estrogen that directly affects the behavior, the libido. So it is I'll leave that up for a second. It is a feedback loop. So hormones and the brain, it's called the brain-testicular axis. I'm just going to slowly go to the slide. I don't want to go too fast. Which part of the brain does the conversion? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's the hypothalamus, but I would have to look that one up. I'll write that down so I don't forget. Alrighty, the brain-testicular axis, so the hypothalamus, yeah. So that's where libido is developed through hormones. So let's see, where are we here? There's a lot of things here. Okay. We're going to look at spermatogenesis shortly. That is the production of sperm. So the interstitial cells produce testosterone in the testes. Testosterone travels directly to the hypothalamus, where it's converted and results in libido. It also stimulates secondary sex organs and secondary sex characteristics to be maintained during the lifetime of the individual. Also, the pituitary, after having been triggered by the gonadotropin releasing hormone, the gonadotropins that are being released are LH and FSH, and they head to LH, the interstitial cells, and FSH, the sustentacular cells. So if there is an overproduction of sperm, that can be inhibited by a hormone known as inhibin. So that will inhibit the release of FSH. And testosterone itself, if there's an overproduction of testosterone, will shut off the gonadotropin releasing hormone and the pituitary gland. So what occurs with aging with males is a decline in testosterone secretion. Peak secretion is 7 milligrams a day at age 20, and very slowly declines to about a fifth of that by age 80. So just like in females, males experience a climactic or menopause because of an increase in FSH and LH. And it results in very similar things, mood changes, hot flashes, and illusions of suffocation. Impotence is erectile dysfunction. So it's not to be confused with infertility. Infertility is a low sperm count, but impotence is erectile dysfunction. It occurs in 20% of males in their 60s and 50% of males in their 80s, although over 90% of impotent men remain able to ejaculate. Okay, so we're going to talk about the production of sperm through spermatogenesis, but to do that, we need to know about meiosis. So meiosis is the reduction of chromosomes into half the number. And that happens with the production of 2 daughter cells. Mitosis is just simply 2 genetically identical daughter cells being produced. It occurs when you're repairing your tissue. It occurs when the embryo is growing. But meiosis produces gametes, haploid cells with half the number of chromosomes, and that's required for sexual reproduction. There's 2 cell divisions, meiosis 1, which separates, and this is a very important distinction to make, homologous chromosomes, and meiosis 2, which separates duplicated sister chromatid. And they are identical chromosomes. So what meiosis does, it keeps chromosome number constant from generation to generation after fertilization, and it occurs in the seminiferous tubules of male. We looked at mitosis quite a long time ago, I think when we were looking at cells, but now we need to look at meiosis. And to do that, I'm going to show you a short film and give you something to work on. So let me stop there.